Okay, let's talk about the word archive. So what I'm archiving, it's the 1990s rave scene and party crew scene, mostly brown, mostly Latinx. The reason I started this work is not just like about like preservation or telling stories or storytelling. What actually pushed me to start these projects was like the erasure of our experiences and culture. And I remember like just like scrolling on the internet before starting, it's like there's something that's missing. Like what's up with like the rave scene in LA? Like you don't see pictures. If you type in 1990s raves, it's all white people. And I remember thinking like, that's not what we experienced here in LA. It was such a mixed crowd.
Chris Blatchford takes us to several of their violent parties in this spot.
Here at a Baldwin Park home, where hot dogs and chicken wings sizzle on the grill, and tattooed tummies of go-go dancers tantalize teenage testosterone. Tequila pops up by the gallon and goes down by the shot. There's the Joker and the Doper.
Okay. So Veteranas and Rucas is a community-sourced archive that celebrates our culture, and it's mostly focused on women. I had to kind of like walk people through what this meant for us and what it was, because when you say party crew, people don't know what that is. So I had to like describe that, you know? And I started the page putting materials out that people were more familiar with, like cholas and cholos, and then little by little started introducing this other like subculture. And it just blew up. I also wanted to create a space that people can engage with and also contribute to. It's almost like if someone sent a photo of themselves at a party wearing like whatever, like Ben Davis and with Adidas, like people would look at that picture and remind them of their own like past, you know? And then that kind of thing was like, okay, that picture reminds me of how I used to dress. I have pictures like that too, so I'm gonna submit them. So it just kind of went like this like chain reaction. We've had conversations about police brutality, violence, which means that we're creating this like collectiveness, like collective like storytelling. Growing up in East LA, which is like the 90s. So the house that I lived in, it was literally like, you could see Whittier Boulevard from where I lived. To hang out with friends, we would also like sneak out of the house in the middle of the night, you know? And then for that, like my memory of that is having some sort of code to know, because this is like before cell phones and stuff, so we only had like pagers. We would like plan on a whistle or a song. If we heard like a specific song outside, we knew it was them. And so then we started like, okay, strategizing, okay, with my sister. One of us would go to the bathroom, flush the toilet, and the other one would like open the door and run out, you know? So then like we'll like flush the toilet so my mom wouldn't hear like the sound or whatever. And then eventually like she caught us. And once she caught us, we're like, okay, we're just gonna like rebel, I guess, and started going out. I've been photographing all these sites that have some like personal meaning. They're all shot like in like nocturnal hours. But what I'm capturing is the essence of the night, what it feels like. It's also like a generous thing to do, right? Like to show the world these parts of LA that people don't get to see. You know, when people think of LA, they think of like the Hollywood sign or like daytime, you know? And like these are all like, at night, they feel like hidden. So in East LA, there's all these shortcuts that kind of cut between the street, like it connects two streets. If the cops were chasing us, right? Like we knew how to get away because there were all these like ways to get around. So that's what is so like personal and special to me. I still know what it feels like to be out there at night, like the crisp air, the clear blue sky at night, you know? Like for example, one that's called Winter Solstice, I've been shooting that same site every year. That's the site where my cousin died. It was around the time when all these gangs were making like peace treaty or truce parties. Violence was getting out of control. So then gangs started kind of like trying to make peace with each other. So this party was supposed to be that, you know, two rival gangs getting together, which to this day, I don't know if it was like a setup or something just went wrong. I know he died sometime around 11:30 midnight. So that's the energy that I'm trying to capture, because I do remember what it felt like then when I found out, you know, like it was hazy at night, it was cold, and I go out there when it feels like that, you know? In order for us to change the future, we need to look at our past to learn from that, right? Even if it's like about trauma or violence, like there's some sort of, like the outcome of that is about celebration, about empowerment by sharing the story. So it's almost like a healing circle that happens. And that becomes part of American culture. We want this material to exist as part of history.